Hey everyone, it's Sarah here for this week's edition of Movement Monday. This week I wanted to go through a basic yoga flow with you guys, go over some positions, work a little bit on some modifications that you can take while you're taking online classes or even that you can carry through when we're all back together in person again. So I'm going to go through it nice and slow. I'm going to give you a couple of different options for each of the poses. And then at the end, I'll take you through it twice, one time for each leg for some of these movements that we're going to do closer to the end of the flow. So grab a mat, find a nice open space for that mat to be in, and let's get started. So we're going to start off nice and simple with our child's pose today. So for child's pose, you're going to start with those knees nice and wide on the mat. So I take mine a little bit wider than my hips, probably right around where my shoulders line up. And then you take those big toes together in the back so that they touch. So you're creating just a nice little space for your hips to go down in between. Depending on your range of motion, maybe the hips will sit a little lower, a little higher, but you're just going to sit them right back towards those heels and then walk those hands out nice and long in front. For this one, taking it nice and comfortable with the forehead down on the mat. Some instructors like to move the hands side to side. So if it feels good for you in that child's pose, taking those arms over to the right or over to the left and finding a little bit of extra stretch from those long fingertips all the way down through that hip in the back. And as always, if that's not super comfortable, you're a little extra tight there, and that doesn't feel quite right, you're always welcome to keep those hands right in center. From here, we're going to find one of my favorite poses as of late, our cat and cow. The reason that I like this so much right now is because I spend so much time sitting in chairs that it's really nice to get my spine moving through a range of motion. It's a time to really connect with your breath. This is something that you can take out of this routine and just kind of do a couple of times throughout the day just to get your spine moving in its range of motion. So our first thing that we want to look at here is our initial positioning for our cat and cow. The shoulders should be right over the wrists, so they're right underneath, nice base of support there. The hips should be right over those knees. So once again, that long line, that base of support. And then I just like to take my feet out behind and relax them. Sometimes you find that you come to this position with the toes curled under, but taking just a moment to let the top of the feet come to the mat. From here, we're going to find a little spinal flow with the pace of our breath. So with our inhale, what we're going to do is we're going to find our cow position. So you're going to drop the belly towards the floor, the hips are going to come up, the butt's towards the ceiling. From there, you're going to open through the chest and look up with that face. So we're finding this one range of motion down towards the floor with our inhale. With that exhale, we're going to curl the pelvis under, reach the spine up towards the ceiling, round out and open up the shoulder blades and tuck the chin in towards the chest. So for this one, it's just a nice easy flow with an inhale here and then an exhale to here, taking that at whatever pace feels good for you. So if you're breathing a little bit faster, you want to move a little faster, that's totally fine. If your breath is a little bit slower and deeper while you're working on this, that's also great, taking it nice and slow. Another thing that I like for this is that there's time and space to make modifications. If you're on a hardwood floor like I am, and this is a little tough on the knees to be in this position, sometimes I just like to roll in the corner of my mat, give me a little bit of extra space. Some people roll up from the bottom. That gives us 2 layers of mats, a little bit more cushioning. Sometimes if you have a blanket or something to put right under those knees, that makes it a little bit more comfortable there. All right, from this position, we're going to move into our down dog. So here we're going to curl those toes under. We're going to press the hips up and back for our downward facing dog. So this is that one that you see your dogs do that nice big stretch. They find that little length through their spine. So we're just going to mimic that movement. For my first one of the day, I usually like to keep a slight bend in my knees. Maybe I alternate by pedaling out my heels a little bit side to side, finding that nice stretch through the hamstrings and then through the calves. My ears come between my biceps, so there's a nice long line from this wrist all the way up to my hips, and then from my hips down to my heels, which eventually I'm focusing on grounding and pushing backwards. So, my heels generally don't reach the ground in my down dog. That's okay to have that little bit of space there. If your heels do reach the ground, maybe just walk them back another step to find a little bit deeper of a stretch. Okay, from here, we're gonna find a quick flow. So it's gonna be from this down dog, we're gonna find a nice inhale for a little bit of extra length. With our exhale, we've got two movements. The first movement is gonna take us out so that the shoulders are over the wrists, and the second is gonna take us from our high to our low plank. So this goes all with that exhale. Lost my headband there. All right, this goes all with that exhale, and then we lower down here into our low plank. So there's a couple of different options for that high to low plank. If you feel really good and really strong through that upper body, you can keep a nice long line and lower down to right here. That's awesome. If you don't feel like that's in your ability level, it is always okay to drop those knees and then bring it from high to low down on the knees. That gives you that little bit of extra support so that we can keep a nice long line through the core. So that's all with your exhale. So it's going to be an exhale to come out, shoulders over wrists, and then continuing that exhale to come down. From this lower plank position, again, a couple of options. We have an upward facing dog and our cobra options. So our upward facing dog, the fullest extent of this, you're going to turn those toes over so that the top of the feet reach the mat. You're going to lift the thighs and the legs off, so it's just your hands and the tops of your feet in contact, and we're going to lift right up. So the fullest extent of that range of motion would be out here, high to low. I'm not even bringing my body in contact with the ground. I'm turning my toes over, and then I'm pressing up into our up dog. From there, we would just exhale to turn it back over to our down dog. So if we're modifying from there, you're bringing it out here, you're bringing it down, maybe you rest on the ground for a second. We've got our low cobra. So our low cobra is just a tiny little lift here through that upper body. Maybe those hands come out. This feels really great on your back. Our cobra with a little bit more extension here, we're still keeping the legs on the ground, but we're just lifting that upper body here. So it's just kind of a nice in-between. You're still getting that stretch, but it's not quite as much stress because I can lift my feet a little bit, my thighs are on the ground. That's with an inhale. So we've got our exhale to float out here and down here. We've got our inhale to lift up into our cobra, low cobra, or up dog. So that's our inhale, and then we're gonna turn the toes over for our exhale. Press the hips up and back into that down dog. Okay, awesome. So from there, we're gonna move to a couple of standing poses. I'm just gonna demo all on one side. When we flow through this, I'm just gonna take us once on each side. So we are going to start in our down dog that we just got back to after that flow. Our next step is our three-legged dog. So we're gonna take that one foot up and back, just slightly. We're gonna bring a slight bend through that bottom knee. So for this one, if you've got a little more flexibility, you can come up a little bit further, but I just kind of like to think about pressing the bottom of my foot towards that back wall of the room. So we're just finding a little extension. This is going to give us some space to bring it forward for our lunge. So I'm bending my bottom knee and I'm bringing a little spring into my step to bring that foot forward. Now, if that's a little bit tough, you aren't quite finding that space, I always like to feel free to bring that foot there, readjust, step it forward, and then you want to make sure when we get here that your knee is right over your ankle. So if your foot lands here and your knee is way out over those toes, you just want to readjust so that the knee is right over top of our ankle and we're not shifting too far forward. We want to protect those knees. All right, so from this position, we've stepped that foot forward in between. We're going to find our crescent lunge. My back heel stays off of the ground, and I'm going to find my balance and then an inhale to sweep my arms up nice and tall into our crescent lunge. Back heel is still off the ground. Front knee is still right over the ankle, and we're finding a little open through the chest, a little bit of balance. All right, great. Our next position is going to be our warrior two. So from here, we're going to open those arms towards the opening in the hips, and that back heel is going to come down. So back heel comes down, arms open. From here, we want to think about, again, Bend through that front knee, but not so much that the knee comes forward. We're opening through the chest, fingertips towards those opposite walls. And then that front heel is gonna line up with the middle of that back foot. So maybe taking that little second for a readjustment. All right, so this is our warrior two. We're gonna find our peaceful warrior. We're gonna flip our front palm, so that's the same side as our bent knee. This arm is gonna come backwards as we lift that front palm. So a lot of people like to put this back hand on the leg. That's totally fine as long as you're not putting too much pressure through that knee. So if you're doing that, maybe taking a bend in that elbow. I just kind of like to open up, reach down behind the leg, and find this nice length from those fingertips down into my hip. All right, so that's our peaceful or our reverse warrior. From there, we're gonna bring it back out, cartwheel those arms back down, lift that back heel up, and then we're just gonna put pressure through our palms, all 10 fingers, and step that front foot backward to meet that back leg back in our down dog. So my hips came right up and back once again. We're right here in our down dog. Next, we're gonna bring the feet forward. So you can take this in nice little steps. You can take a little bit larger steps. If you're a little bit more advanced, you can hop those feet forward. I just like to keep it right at steps forward. So we're walking the feet forward to meet the hands. This here is our forward fold. Same thing with that down dog. You can keep a slight bend in those knees, especially if you're not feeling super flexible already today. We're gonna let the head and neck relax down towards the floor. We're gonna let the shoulders relax. We're gonna let the fingertips relax. Maybe in this position, sometimes I like to find my opposite elbow with my opposite hand for a little bit deeper of a relaxation or a ragdoll pose. Finding a couple of nice deep breaths in that position just to find a good stretch. Up next, we're gonna find an inhale for our halfway lift. So halfway lift, our goal is a flat back, no matter where your hands land on your legs. So I like to take mine to my shins. I find a nice long spine. I keep my neck nice and long, so I'm not looking up, but I'm keeping it neutral and long. And then we're gonna exhale to bring it back down into that forward fold. So once again, that's an inhale for a halfway lift, flat back. Exhale for our forward fold. From here, with that next inhale, we're gonna roll it up nice and slow, vertebrae by vertebrae to standing. And then we're gonna finish out this little flow in mountain pose. So our mountain pose, those feet are right underneath the hips. We're standing nice and tall and strong, a little pressure through all 10 toes, pressure through the 3 corners of the feet, the inside ball, the outside ball, and then the heel. I like to find a nice proud chest here shining forward, pull the shoulder blades together, the hands maybe face forward with the fingers spread or face in through the body. So this is a nice strong mountain pose. We're rooted through the ground. We're finding nice stability. So this is a great pose to start in for finding stability, for grounding yourself. And you can take this into a lot of different balance poses if you've ever tried tree pose, or we can take it right back into that flow that we found. So we're gonna find a nice big inhale, arms are gonna come out and up. With our exhale, you're gonna swan dive forward back into our forward fold. We're gonna inhale for another halfway lift. Exhale to plant those hands, and then we're gonna step our feet right back into our high plank to downward dog. So high plank and then downward dog. All right, so from here, I'm just gonna find that little flow one time in each direction with each foot. So for our warrior and our crescent, I'll be facing away so that opposite foot can come forward. But just stick with me and move with the pace of your breath. So if you need to slow it down or speed it up a little bit, we're just gonna move through those couple of moves twice. So we're starting out in our child's pose right here, finding that little stretch through the spine, letting the low back relax. We're gonna press it up to hands and knees. We're gonna find 2 nice deep breaths in our cat and cow, readjusting those knees to be under the hips. We've got an inhale to look up. We've got an exhale to round out the spine towards the ceiling. We've got an inhale to look up, chest towards the floor, opening up. One more time, exhale to round out that spine towards the ceiling, and then go ahead, come back to a nice neutral spine. Up next, we've got our downward dog. So curling those toes under, pressing those hips up and back. We're finding that downward dog. Maybe you still got a slight bend in those knees. Maybe you take a second to pedal out those heels. All right, we're gonna take that little flow from our high to low push-up into our up dog or cobra. Take any of those modifications that works for you today. We're finding our own personal best flow here. So we've got an inhale for a little extra length back through those hips. We're gonna exhale to float out, shoulders over wrists, and then down high to low. Flip those toes, press up dog, big inhale, and then curl those toes one more time. Exhale, press the hips up and back into our downward dog. We're gonna take that right foot up and back into our three-legged dog here. So again, pressing towards that back wall. Slight bend through that bottom knee, big exhale. Bring that foot forward. Make sure that the knee comes right over that ankle. We're gonna find our stability. Inhale for our crescent lunge, up nice and high. We're gonna exhale, turn that back heel down. Open up those arms, warrior two. Flip the front palm, inhale, reverse our warrior, peaceful warrior. We're gonna cartwheel the arms all the way down. Exhale, bring it down. Bring that back heel up. Bring that forward foot back to meet in our down dog. And then we're gonna walk those feet forward to meet the hands. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. One more time, just like that. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. And then inhale, roll it up all the way to our mountain pose. All right, big inhale, sweep those arms out and up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, one more time, halfway lift. Exhale to forward fold. Plant those hands on the ground. Maybe you bend through those knees. We're gonna step those feet back, high plank, and then back to our downward dog. Bring those knees down wide to the mat. Sit those hips back for child's pose. Right here, we're bringing it back up. Hands and knees, cat and cow, 2 nice deep breaths. Inhale to lift the chest. Exhale to round the spine towards the ceiling. One more time, just like that. Inhale, drop the belly, lift the chest. Exhale, round the spine out towards the ceiling. All right, bring it back to neutral. We've got our down dog next. Curl those toes under. Press the hips up and back. Find that little bit of extra space. We've got an inhale to lengthen in our downward dog. Exhale, float the shoulders out over the wrists and lower down. Flip the toes. Inhale, lift up, cobra, low cobra, up dog. Exhale, curl the toes under, back into our down dog. All right, we've got our three-legged dog on that opposite side. Other foot up and back. Slight bend through that standing leg. And we're gonna sweep that foot forward right here in between those hands. Finding our stability. Big inhale. We're gonna lift up. All right, here's where I'm gonna face away from you, but stick with me. We're gonna exhale, turn that back heel down. Open up those arms, fingertip to fingertip, nice length. Flip the front palm, inhale, lift up, peaceful or reverse warrior. And then we're gonna exhale, cartwheel those arms all the way down. Lift that back heel up. A little pressure through the palms, all 10 fingers. Step that foot back to meet in our downward dog. Walk those feet forward. Forward fold here. Maybe those legs are a little bit straighter than last time, starting to loosen up. We've got an inhale for a halfway lift. Flat back here, exhale to forward fold. One more time, just like that. An inhale to halfway lift. And an exhale to forward fold. We're gonna roll all the way up with that next inhale into our mountain pose. The feet are right under those hips. Those palms open nice and wide, feeling stable and grounded through the bottoms of those feet. All right, from here, we're gonna finish out in our child's pose. So I want you to find a nice big inhale, bring the arms out and up. We're gonna exhale to forward fold. We're gonna plant those hands. We're gonna step the feet back, high plank, press the hips up and back, down dog. And then we're gonna drop those knees nice and wide, bring those toes together, sit those hips back into child's pose. Child's pose is also a great resource if you're just feeling like you need to take things a little bit slower at any time. If you're in the middle of a flow and you feel like maybe you just need to slow it down and drop it back, it's always totally fine to drop back into your child's pose. Take a second, recenter, find your breath. Maybe, like I said, you feel comfortable walking those hands over to one side of the mat or over to the other side, finding that little bit of length. When it feels good, sitting it up. We're just gonna finish out today as we would a normal yoga class. So finding just a comfortable seated position. So this would be after our Shavasana, our final relaxation. We would bring it up, take a couple of nice deep breaths, find our center once again, bringing those arms out and up with our next inhale. The palms find each other at the top, pull down to heart center. Maybe you pull those thumbs up to the third eye, maybe you just leave them right at heart center. And I always like to finish off with the light in me honors the light in you. And I thank you for joining me on this Movement Monday. Hopefully this was helpful for moving forward with our yoga practices, or maybe just taking a couple minutes for yourself to find a little flow and recenter with your breath. Give your spine a little bit of break from sitting all day. Like I said, my name is Sarah, and thank you for practicing with me today. Bowing as we say, Namaste.